Hello, students. Welcome to this lecture series for PhD students. So far, we have discussed many things about your synapses, and we have covered so far your introduction, then statement problem, then review of related literature, then objectives, then hypothesis. Next two lectures, this is second last in this series, this especially for the newly inducted PhD students in Indian universities. Though this lecture is meant for our Maharishi Dayananda University Rohtak, but others can get benefit of it once it is available in other social media. So after that, we go for any research is conducted, is done through a proper methodology. Because of that it is called research. Unless and until you have a methodology, methods of arriving your concluding points, it cannot be simply research. Though these methods are different in context of your science technology, in context of our social science, in context of your humanities, and in many cases also they are similar in okay. So research data is required, research data collection is required, then data analysis is required. So as our focus is on social science, so my examples and others will be based on social science research. Okay, so methodology. Sometimes research methodology, the headings you find in some synopsis, and sometimes research, rather I suggest my student to give the heading, one of the headings as one of the headings as headings as research design. Okay, so research design. So in that case, under research design also, under research design also you can write your methodology. Anyway, it differs what your research supervisor is suggesting, and your seniors, even your colleagues. But rather I suggest you write a research design. Research design covers many things in research design covers all these research methodology, collection data, all these. So research design, what you are supposed to, again under this design, so you may write subheadings also. Research design is the heading, and you may write subheadings also. Okay, subheadings also. Like what could be subheading? Like first one would be research approach. Research approach. Research approach is nothing but you should rather, I would say, especially the social science and humanities students, you mention research approach. Research approach is the beginning part of your research design. What is the approach? You must have studied your master classes, or your whether it is basically two major blocks are of their approach, and rather three blocks. One is quantitative and qualitative and mixed. So you may, especially for people from humanities background, they have only options is qualitative approach, because in their data they don't have any quantification aspect of any research data, especially in literature people. But in social science, we have largely social science, any field, maybe political science, history, geography, library and information science, economics, history. So we have a quantified data. So that's why, anyway, we are not coming into what is quantification, quantitative approach, what is qualitative approach, what is a mixed approach. Mixed approach is that when you largely you have your qualitative or quantitative, and in the latter part you mix up those to arrive at a research findings, then it is quantitative, remixed approach. So you need to mention this, then come to what kind of research. Like in largely social science, we have survey kind of things, we have experimental kind of things, we have historical kind of things, So you, whatever you studied, by fitting into this, you mention one liner, maybe one or, because this is synopsis, and while submitting your full-fledged PhD thesis, there you may elaborate these things. You just simply hint, symbolically, you need to mention this kind of things. Okay, so then go to the what kind of research data, what kind of research data are going to be in your particular research. So research, mention nature of research data, and nature of data collection, because how do you collect data? While collecting data, you need to have some kind of tools of research, like largely in questionnaires, meant for largely collecting data. Sometimes couple of other methods also can be clubbed into one data collection methodology, tools, like sometimes interview, sometimes personal interviews, and sometimes telephoning, sometimes email. So mix of things you can. And these days, like in traditional form, people used to make a long list of questionnaires they used to send by post, but these days other technological formats are available, so you can mention also Google format, Google form. Google can be taken as assistance for your data collection. You make your questions and transfer into mechanized into Google form, then you send it to by your email ID. Okay, so that could be your research data. Then data collection, then obviously what to do, you need to do something with the collected data. Data is raw, you have collected, then you classify the data, and you keep the relevant data, and redundant data should be should be emptied, or should not be there in your research work. Then you need to have some kind of for analysis statistical formulae. So there are smaller, very surface level statistical formula, maybe mean, median, and mode, and then you have different kinds of statistical formula can be implemented in later work. Just simply mention, because this is your PhD synopsis only. Okay, then this is methodology part. Okay, and while doing methodology, you need to cite your 1-2 methodology books, especially good books. What is a good book? A good book like method, there are many good books, especially books published by Sage, and good authors also, largely followed by Creswell, Flick. These are research methodology authors, largely followed all over the world. So you need to give suggestions, citation from those books, so that while reading your synopsis, people or the evaluators come to know that you have good sense of doing research, you developed or developing scholarship. Okay, this is what. The next heading would be, then you mention, it differs, but I am typically narrating a representative synopsis. Then somewhere you mention like significance of your work, or sometimes people, instead of significance, they write a rationale of your PhD. How your PhD you are thinking of a good or a very original sense, which people haven't done. Totally, in full form. People haven't done your PhD, you are picking up or taking up. So some aspects of people have conducted, but the remaining research gap is being conducted by you. That's why it is a PhD work, very unique that way. So mention. Then you define scope and limitations also, because you are not, because the PhD basic nature of any good PhD is that your thrust area should be specific and very specific. So it should not be that generalized. If it is generalized, then it cannot be a good research work. So what are the scope and what are the limitations? What people exactly write in the, like you may define your subjects. For subjects here is your population, who are to be, from which sources you get your data. Then sometimes, like citing the example I used to cite in your previous modules is, if your topic is related to choice-based study system, then you say somewhere say this work doesn't have any legal or authoritative kind, simply PhD work, and the data would be collected from, suppose in one of my PhD scholar, data would be collected from the central universities only, if or what are those universities, whether how this CBCS was implemented. Okay, so and the limitations. So scope and limitation in one word it is written. Then somewhere you write your after this, then bibliographical organization. Bibliographical, we people from library and information science, because we are supposed to be experts or trained in that way, we write bibliographical organization. That means referencing style also. You may mention referencing style, because after all, what is PhD? PhD in one another way could be defined as systematic work, organized observation. So how the data you are collecting or source you are using, you need to refer in that, you need to show to the world, to the evaluator, these are the sources I will be collecting, these are the books I will be consulting, these are the websites I will be consulting. So that and how these data sources would be organized, there is a proper way. After all, you are doing research not for yourself, even for the society. In people in society, they will be observing, they will be reading. So whenever it is needed, they would refer, they would verify the for verification kind of things we need to. So that's why, whether you mention, if it is largely if it is a work on humanities, PhD in humanities, they largely follow that style manual, that is MLA handbook, Modern Language Association of America. If it is a social sciences, then APA, American Psychological Associations. And if any universities are having their own style also, they can mention. In science and technology, they go for chemical association of or physical scientist association, something like that. But in social science, even Harvard and associations are there. The old style is your Chicago manual. So there are different style, and while mentioning, you can mention the which editions of MLA or APA handbook would be applied for your research organization. And you mention tentative generalization, tentative chapterization, tentative chapters, because at this point of time probably you are not sure enough how your final thesis would look like. So that's a tentativity or chapterization. Rather bring chapterization first, then bibliographical organization should be the last one. I've just now I discussed. So chapterization you just mentioned, because unless and until you mention the chapterization, it looks hazy, that means you are blank. The evaluators, the panel, you would be judging your research proposal, may think you don't have any plan. You may change it, but at least the first chapter is very sure. You can write introduction, and the last chapter is research findings and suggestions, conclusion, research findings and suggestions for further research. 2 chapters are clear, and in between And sometimes in social science, a full chapter is devoted to review of related literature. Then one third would be your research design, then data collection, analysis, and you can the second last or the fourth, fifth. So altogether, typically, if you look at the trend, then social science research, 5 to 6 chapters are mentioned. So with this, your synopsis can be designed. In the next module, I will make the gist of all previous modules. For then, bye bye.